Talking to all the participants, I welcome Dr. Shweta Singh for today's webinar. Today's topic for the webinar is Everything is Political, but what is politics really? It's a quite interesting topic. This will be presented by Dr. Shweta Singh. She is an assistant professor at General School of International Affairs. She will also be available to take questions related to the subject and the topic. So if you have any questions related to the presentation, please keep it till the end. We will be more than happy to answer that. Now I request Dr. Sen to start with the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Rathima. Thank you so much for the introduction. To all the students or all the participants, thank you for being here. I hope you all are safe. I hope you can hear me properly. Just a bit of introduction of me. My name is Shweta Sen. I just joined General this January, from this February actually. I got my PhD from Kent State University, USA, and my specialization is in IR, but I have got my PhD in political science. And I specifically look at non-state legitimacy of armed groups, how they create legitimacy. So today I'm going to talk about politics. What is politics basically? So before I start, I want to ask you some questions, okay? So let me just begin with the assumption that you already know what politics is, right? Of course you know, you are in India, of course you have to know what politics is. So I have certain questions here. Are diplomatic meetings political? Is the institution of marriage political? Is fashion political? Is kissing political? What I want you guys to do is to jot down your answer to this question, yes or no. Or you can say it depends on the context. And I want you to keep it with you. And then we'll go over it at the end of the presentation. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to look it over. So, okay, let's start. So politics. What is politics? Let's begin by considering the extraordinary pace of politics. Some major events for which we don't have to spare any thought to figure out whether it's political or not. For example, India's independence movement or the Iraq war. These events altered the pace of the global political landscape to such a degree that most people would have no problem identifying them as such. Right? So that is the extraordinariness of politics. But what is the ordinary part of politics? Now, the ordinary part is most prevalent than the extraordinary part. Only a few of the aforementioned events, for example, American civil rights or Iraq war, has directly impacted you. But the most ordinary or perhaps even the mundane politics affect us more profoundly, right? In our everyday, we face politics and often ourselves engages in politics without even realizing. For example, probably you are of course using a laptop right now. You already have a phone with you very nearby, or remote control. Now this electric components has a special mineral in it, which is called coltan. So coltan is financing one of the bloodiest civil war in Congo in the present time. Coltan has been used by the armed groups in Congo, Eastern Congo, where there are almost 30 armed groups who are using coltan as a way to finance their war. And the international or the global economic organization are completely aware of it, but using it without any sort of repercussion. So in that case, when we think about this logic of when we actually can figure out the connection of between our laptop and a civil war, then the ordinary does not remain ordinary anymore. Some seemingly ordinary events can acquire extraordinary political significance. In other words, politics permeates and affects our entire lives, often without us realizing just how much of our daily routine is affecting politics and informed by political discussion. Now, so fine, politics is ordinary, right? But when we see something, how can we recognize it as political? The first thing is, of course, everything related to state is politics, right? What UN is doing is politics. What the state is doing is politics. What the political leaders are doing is politics. This is the narrower definition of politics. But if we want to broaden it, then I can ask you questions such as, are animal rights movement political? When PETA supporters throw blood on celebrities wearing fur coats, is it political? For many who argue for a broader interpretation of politics, such as myself, I think it is deeply political. Why? Because it is about conflict and it is also about conflict resolution. Politics is a particular kind of process through which we understand and resolve conflict. Now, Haywood offers a somewhat broader definition of this politics. He says that politics is an activity through which people make, preserve, and amend the general rules under which they live. By that definition, is the institution of marriage political? We are going to get into it later. So, politics at the end of the day is a process through which we make an attempt to reconcile our rival interests. The mean can be violent, for example, throwing blood on celebrities, or non-violent, for example, showing documentaries to the public to change the perception of powers. So the mean can be different, but the end is always political. They're trying to have a political conversation at the end of the day. So, at the same time, politics can be understood as a social and public activity. It is a social activity because it is an activity we engage in together with others, or one through we engage others. It is critically challenging or engaging with the status quo and the present state of affairs. But the real question is, what is social? Is it simply an activity that is engaged in by more than two people? If so, if everything that is social is also political, is going to a pub or a football game or a shopping or going for shopping is political? And then if everything is political, doesn't this face politics a bit too thin? This is where feminism comes in. So feminists say everything that is public is political. So, for example, an act of reading in itself is not political. But if you are reading a banned book in the open, in a coffee shop, then it is of course political. It is sending a political message across. Even if you are doing it in private, it is also political. And political action does not depend on the location. Politics takes place whenever and wherever power is exercised and challenged. So in that way, is institution of marriage political? In my opinion, yes, it is. With the institution of marriage, at least in India, we give rights of marriage to certain population and not to others. It is a conflict. It is a public activity that affects the society. Thus, it is a political affair. Now, in the same vein, I argue that kissing is also very, very, very good. Now, I'm going to give you an example. If you guys see this photo, there is this guy trying to separate two, give me one second, sorry. two people who are trying to show affection to each other, right? So kissing in itself is not political. If you are kissing your, I don't know, parents at home, or giving your cousin a good night kiss, it is certainly not political. Yet in a different context, kissing could indeed be quite political. So in 2000, so a little bit of background of this picture. In 2013, two Moroccan teenagers were charged with public indecency and, although eventually acquitted, faced a possible 5-year prison sentence after pictures of the couple kissing was posted on Facebook. While it does not seem that the couple saw their kiss as political, the gesture was quickly politicized because the society politicized it. The society made it, the conservative society made it political. So in protest of that charges, hundreds of people started kissing in public in Morocco, in Turkey, in many other parts of the world. Then we can totally understand why it is political. But again, if you trace it back to the private event of two people kissing, then we understand that a mere activity within a private sphere can be a political event. Thus, while kissing is not in and of itself political, it has the potential to be political, depending on the context. Now, let me ask you another question. Is graffiti political? And I am going to give you a few seconds to read this line. What does this graffiti signify? Graffiti is political when we understand the question of interpretation. That is, whether an act is interpreted as political either by the actor who performance or by those who encounter it once it is projected into the world. While it might seem that the intention behind an action, that is the intention to engage in politics or to make political statement through one's action, is more important than the interpretation, often that is not actually the case. So, as a form of expression, graffiti can be a challenge to social norms and laws that dictate what public spaces should look like and to the sanctity of private property. Thus, it can be political in the sense that it is a dialogue with the existing authorities and the prevailing social norms and laws. In other words, in every graffiti is not political. But if we interpret it in a certain way, when we are interpreting the message that is confined in it, then it becomes a little bit more political. The content of the graffiti, the message it is trying to convey, its location, and the way it is being reacted to by those who are viewing or engaging with it can all help us decide whether or not it is political. So ultimately, what is politics? I argue that while not everything is necessarily political, everything has the potential to be political. First, depending on the context. Second, depending on the interpretation. Such definition of politics enables us to transcend the hall of the government and the institution of the state and multiply the stages where politics is enacted. Now, I'm going to give you what I think is politics is. First, of course, it is an activity. It is an activity where people participate. People try to preserve or amend the general rules under which they live. It is also about ethics. It is about creating a just society. And most importantly, it involves interaction. among citizens who wants to be free and equal. Thus, it gives meaning to life and affirms the uniqueness of each individual. Ultimately, politics, people are politics. Politics is individual. Now, I welcome any questions that you might have.
So I have a question out here from Ashreya, wherein she says, what is your take on the increasing role of digital media in defining
Can
an
you,
election campaign?
can you,
And is it,
I cannot hear you. Is it?
yeah, am I audible to you now? Is it better?
Yeah, go on now.
Yeah. So my question is from Ashreya. The question is, what is your take on the increasing role of digital media in defining an election campaign? And is it more cost effective and environmental friendly as compared to conventional methods?
Vidman, is there any way I can see the question because you are being cut off? You are cutting off. Your voice is cutting off.
All right. So on your control panel, we could see there is a section called as question. If you just click there, we'll be able to
Yeah,
view those questions.
give me one second. So I can see only the chat window, but I
Uh,
cannot see any questions over there.
Just wait, I'll make you organizer.
Yeah, Tanusri is much more audible than Vidman's voice.
Okay, ma'am, I'll make you organizer. Now you can see the questions.
Okay, so what was the question? Give me one second. Increasing role of digital media in defining and political election campaign, and is it more cost effective and environmentally friendly as compared to conventional method? It is a very good question. Let me think about it. So with with globalization, of course, we will see that digital media will have more and more role in defining election. They're defining the narrative, defining everything. But is it cost effective and environmentally friendly? Of course, it might be environmentally friendly, but you know, we have to keep in mind in India, digital media is not as penetrative as it is in Western media, right? In Western countries, everybody has a laptop. Most of them have a laptop. Most of them has a phone. Most of them are literate, sort of. So it is easier for the digital media to reach out to them. Whereas in India, it is very, very difficult, right? In the urban part, of course, yes. But the more rural we go, the lesser it gets, So in that sense, I think we have to figure out, or we have to distinguish between where it is being used. Digital media is being used in urban areas, yes. If they can penetrate the market, it is of course more environment friendly and cost friendly, but cost effective. But if we look at the rural areas, it's not actually, they are not really prevalent in there. So overall, the cost effectiveness and the environmental friendliness, we have to question that in the overall scenario. I hope that answers your question, Arsha.
Thank you so much. Second question out here is by Sanket. The question, if I'm audible to you, the
Mm,
question is, if politics is an important form of human activity, why it
mm.
is considered bad?
Why is it considered? That depends on who is saying it, right? My mom thinks it's very bad. I should not take part in protests. I should not take. I should not write letters to the PM. I should not raise my voice against inequalities. But also, we have to figure out the where my mom is coming from. She is coming from a place of fear, a fear where fear in a society where woman is not really safe. Also, we have to figure it out her privileged situation, right? She is privileged. Most of the politics that is happening around her does not really affect her. She is a Hindu woman. She comes from a higher class. She comes from a higher caste. So she doesn't really get why politics is why it is necessary for me as a woman to be involved in politics. According to her, that is bad. But if I see it from my perspective, it is as potent as breathing. You know, the way I breathe when I start my day, when I turn on the TV, the first thing, the fact that I can turn on the TV and with my coffee in hand, and I don't have to figure out where I'm going to get my next meal, that event itself is political. That is a political activity that is dependent on many variables that many people are not. In other words, there are my reality is very different than somebody else's reality, right? So in that case, it depends I mean, whether you think politics is bad depends on your perspective, where you're coming from. I think it is my duty to think about politics. The fact that I cannot venture out in Sonipat after 10 in the at night, that is politics. That is society. At the same time, that is politics. So uh, I have to think about politics because that is the only way I can better my situation, right? So in that case, politics is not bad. It is quite good actually. It is a form of engagement. If there is no politics, we'll never question the system. We'll be complacent. If that answer your question.
Thank you so much. Dr. Sen, my next question is from Aditya. The question is, why isn't an issue like climate change prominently
Say that
discussed
again.
in Indian politics, despite the fact
Climate
that,
change.
yeah,
Why isn't an issue like climate change prominently discussed? Okay.
discussed in Indian politics, despite the
Um,
fact that it affects us so much?
that is a very good question. I don't know if there is an easy answer to it, but let me think. Um, you know that there is a notion that we choose our political issue based on our class, based on our privileges or our disadvantage. If you look at India, the most prominent issue that we have is hunger. The most prominent issue that we have is illiteracy, employment, um, nutrition. So in that way, and I mean, of course, I'm not denying the fact that climate change is very real and we need to start talking about climate change from now. But when you think about the ground realities, or think about India, where 70% of the people is not a part of the regular economy, then we understand where the politicians are coming from, right? Instead of political change, climate change, they are more willing to talk about what is the immediate danger, if that answer your questions. But so I lived in America for 8 years. So one thing I have noticed is that in India, even if we have a lot of problem, even if we have massive illiteracy and economic problems, we are more understanding of the fact that climate change is real. Whereas in America, it is just like people don't even care. People are not even being willing to accept it. So in that way, India is in a better situation than America is actually. At least there is a sort of acknowledgement, even within the common population, that hey, climate change is real. We are getting affected by it every day. In America, they're just oblivious to the reality. Most of them. If that answer your questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sen. My next question is, will be a global affairs degree help somebody, to make a career in politics or, as a political analyst?
Political analyst? Definitely yes, because the whole point of being political science and being political affairs is for you to the way we conduct classes is we try to critically engage. We don't give you a bunch of data. It's not that you have to read everything, come to the examination hall and just write it down. It's not about that. We ask, or we expect you to analyze certain events in your own ways. We try to develop your own thinking mechanism. And when you think about political analysts, this is what they need, right? They are independent thinkers. So yes, in other words, the training is such that it will help you to be a better analyst of political and social events. Yes.
Thank you so much. My next question is from Dia. Her question is, what are some ways to show political dissent, especially in times like, when going out is almost impossible? How do we show our political dissent in situations like this?
I love this question. Ah, political dissent. How you? Oh, give me 1 second to think about it. I think educating the people who are surrounding you is the first step towards dissent. Challenging their interpretation of certain events or challenging their ideas of certain events is your first foray into politics, right? Other than that, everything is online now. You can write a blog, you can go on Twitter, send out a tweet. That is political. If you want, you can donate to the causes you like. That is political. There is so many ways like you can be political. Dissent can be shown. It's not only about going to um, a protest with Jhanda. I mean, many people cannot do that, but it's about supporting and cause, both directly, both indirectly. And there are infinite indirect ways that you can show your support or show your dissent. Hell, the whole idea of you dissenting in your individual space is political. And works. The fact that you are, say, mm, you are watching certain news channels but not some others, this particular event is a form of dissent. So dissent is every day. You are dissenting every which way you can dissent, I feel like.
Thank you so much. Our next question is from Farzan Ahmed. The
Hmm.
question is, if politics is the way people strive to build a just society, it
Huh.
should be in definition all inclusive. Why is
Huh.
it that there have to be some policy maker and the other part has to be the admirer of the policy? And
I
clearly, there
thought,
is an injustice in the way it applies to people. What is the role of moral responsibility in the presence of politics as a tool for building and maintaining a just society so that policies are not self serving and uh, equitable? What's your take on
uh,
this?
can you give me 1 second? I couldn't.
Sure, please take it.
So I'll just read the question. Okay.
Sure.
What is oh, yes. It should be in definition of all inclusive. Why is it that there have to be some policy makers and other not listed here? The role of moral responsibility in the presence of politics is a tool for building and maintaining. This is a very good question, and this is a very complicated question for which I do not have a simple answer. Mm, Uh, Politics should be about morality, but in many cases, we often see that morality takes a step back. It's a it's a secondary thought. Now we cannot deny the fact that there will be injustice in politics. There will be one group that will try to dominate the other. But what we can do is to make sure that this domination is not pervasive. It is not prominent. We can rise up, we can educate ourselves, we can be critical consumers of information that comes our way, and we as a people, and I'm not talking about political leaders as the or the policy makers who are, who determines what politics. I'm saying that people should educate themselves enough that they can question or uh, make the people who are in power accountable. That we have to do to create a just and equal society. So maybe the onus is not on the policymakers, it is on us. How much can we make them accountable? If that may answer your question.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sen. Our next question is from Moshta Jirab. Her question is, if every situation and decision has the ability to turn political, how does
Hmm.
it not lead to chaos, especially in a secular country like India?
Hmm. Give me 1 second to think about it. But it depends on how do you define chaos. Do you define plurality of ideas as chaos, or do you define violence as chaos? Right? If there is plurality of ideas, um, which is coming into fore in a non-violent way, in a very respectable way, then it is good for the society, good for the politics, good for every strata of the society. It gets horrible, it becomes chaos in the like literal term. It becomes chaos literally when it is violent or there is no structure to it. So just because everything is political, it does not mean that everything will be chaotic. It depends on how it is exercised. How this plurality of ideas, is there enough avenue for us to have our plurality of ideas at the forefront? If there is not, if there is no avenues, then we see it is becoming chaotic. So for example, why does protest happen, right? Violent protest happen, riot happens against government. There is a theory in the political science world that if you give people enough avenue to come out and voice their opinion, we will see less violence, more structured protest, such as picketing, etc. Or a march. But when all the avenues are closed, then we see people breaking laws, burning down buses, being violent. So politics in itself, I don't think is chaotic at all.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sai.
Yeah.
Our next question is from Donika. It's an interesting question. Question is, can an issue like abortion become political?
Oh, I mean, abortion is a hugely political issue. I mean, there is no doubt. It is. It is. It is about rights, right? The rights of over someone's body. And when it comes to abortion, women do not have the right on their own damn body. Excuse my language. So it is hugely political because it is about right. It is exercising our rights over our own body. We should be able to say what should happen to our body. We should be able to make the decision whether we want a tattoo or not on our body, whether we want a piercing or not, whether we want to have children or not. So when it is taken by us by an outside force, then it becomes political. It becomes a human rights issue. So yeah, abortion is extremely political. I mean, that is what we are seeing in America, right? The huge debate about abortion. So yeah, abortion is a huge debate right now, political debate right now.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sen. Our next question is from Abhishek. The question is, if a non-Dalit takes up an issue on Dalits, or for that matter, a man speaks up for a woman, does it have an adverse impact on their politics as the agency is taken over by the privileged?
That is such a good question. Let me think about it for a second. So let me give you a personal example. When my friends, my male friends, talk about female issues, I am more than happy to have an ally, right? We need allies, right, to move forward in society. But my problem starts when they start, the other party who is not directly affected by a problem that I am being personally affected by, start silencing my voice, start man-explaining to me. Then I have a problem. So I'm giving you a very personal answer to this question. Um, uh, when somebody is privileged, they should use their privilege to bring the voice of the downtrodden to the front. But in that way, they have to make sure that they are not silencing the voice. They are not giving their own interpretation of the problem. They should put forward the collective emotion of the people who they're fighting for. If that answers your question. It is a complicated answer, but I think it is a very complicated question.
Thank you so much for your answer. I now move on to the next question by Shivani. Uh, where do
Who?
we draw the line from Shivani? Shivani
Oh,
Aman.
Shivani.
Her question is, where do we draw the line between don't politicize the issue, and this is definitely a political issue. Where do we draw a line?
I cannot hear you. Sorry. Can you say that again, or tell me the name
I'll
of the
just
person?
repeat. Yeah, the
Yeah.
question is by Shivani Amarnath.
Hmm.
The
I see.
question is,
Draw the line between don't politicize the issue, and this is definitely a political science, a
yeah,
political issue. Huh. That is another very interesting question. You guys are really intelligent, by the way, I have to tell you. I think it depends on who is the speaker, who is trying to get the point across. So again, I'm going to give you another personal experience. Um, so I was talking to my brother, my cousin, about a film, and I didn't really like the way in that movie females were portrayed. So my brother, in its all chauvinistic glory, in a very sweet way, said that you should not make a big drama about it. You do not. You should not like let it be what it is. Let it simple. Let it be simple. He just wanted me to simplify the event. Now, uh, I am completely against the whole notion of simplifying every event. I do think if somebody tells you don't politicize the issue, that means they're in a privileged position. They don't have to think about politics the way we need to understand politics, right? So again, I don't think there is a line. You cannot draw a line. It depends on where it is coming from, actually. Uh, like I say, everything is political. It depends on the context. It also depends on the interpretation, right? The other person, how they are interpreting a specific event. If they are unmoved by it, then it is not political for them. But if you are moved by it, if you think that there is a inherent problem with that event, then it is of course political. You can think of it as political and go on with it. I hope it answer your
thank you
question.
so much, Dr. Sen. We now take the last question. It's a long one, so if we could come on to the question screen. The question is from Smith Shah. His
Give me
question
one.
is, yeah,
What is the name? Smith Shah. Okay.
Smith
Yeah, I got it.
Shah, yeah.
Hi, current political ideologies relevant with the modern our current political ideology. Classification of left and right or liberal or conservative are a bit old in nature but applied to modern. These ideologies are mostly encompassing religious affiliation are limited in economy and trade. Why aren't hybrid ideologies or new age ideologies taking shape for popular opinion? Well, that you should definitely join the political science program. I'm telling you, you're trying to come up with a theoretical explanation of politics, which is amazing. But let me answer your question first. Are there new ideologies, or are we are seeing a new version of the same, a modified version of the same ideologies which are going on for years and years? For example, feminism is a comparatively new ideology, by the way. So is democratic socialism in that way. What Bernie and Alexander Ocasio-Cortez, what they personify, that is a sort of new idea of politics in America, right? So, um, in most of the ideologies that I see here now, I think it is hybrid. But having said that, I was reading a Guardian article. It was talking about in present times, there is no central ideology. Either people are on far left or far right. The centrist ideology, this is coming to an end. People are going to the extreme side. So, so I don't know if that answer your question or not, but I think it's more about it's not it's not about what new ideologies are emerging right now. I think more important event that we have to take into account is people are very adamant about choosing an ideology. They are not being apolitical anymore, either right or left. I'm not going to say which one is right, the right side, or which one is the wrong side, but the thing is people are becoming more political. That is an ideology that I think it is the new age ideology that we are seeing right now. Even we are like, let's talk about the millennial politics. I mean, the millennial politics, the Generation Z politics, right? We are more involved in politics than ever, more than our previous generation, to be honest. I'm more involved in politics than my parents. And if you look at the new generation, they are also more involved in politics. For example, the environmental politics, the right to life politics, the right to march movement in Washington D.C. after the school shooting, the environmental activists who are basically teenagers right now. So I do think that this is our new ideology now, that everything is political and we need to choose a side for ourselves or for the society, if that answers your question.
So much, Dr. Sen. I think it was very informative. It gives us a whole perception about what is politics and what is non-politics, and it's very you need to be aware of these things to understand how to differentiate between political and non-political activities. With this, I would also like to I missed a couple of questions due to time constraint. You can certainly write to us, or Dr. Sen, if you could share your email ID,
Yeah,
maybe students they want to reach to you if they have any questions.
yeah, sure. My email ID is shweta@jju.edu. I think that is my email ID.
Yeah, dot
Um,
IM.
yeah, .edu. And yeah, please shoot me a question. And I loved your questions, by the way.
All right. So thank you so much for today's session, and we hope to again come back with some interesting topics for you. Uh, we would be sending you the invite to inform you about our next webinar. Till then, thank you so much for your participation. Thank you so much, Dr. Sen, for the
Thank you.
presentation.
Thank you all. Have a great
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
day. Bye.
Thank you, Dr. Sen.
Bye.
Bye.